Surgical mask characteristics, what are they made? Back to the function. What are they supposed to do? And we'll look at that in a fair amount of detail here for 3 or 4 minutes. Standard surgical mask. This is the one that most people are familiar with. It's just a surgical mask. It's the blue mask that was on the shelf that I put on every day, every operation. If you really look at what they were designed to do, they weren't meant to protect you from breathing. They were meant as a splash guard. They were meant to protect your face from water that splashed up off the patient so that it wouldn't necessarily soak through to your face. And they were there to prevent you from spitting on the patient, which is still considered bad. Respirators, the next level. In the U.S., the most common is the N95, and we'll look at the different standards here in a minute. They're designed to actually provide some protection. So now you can see that where the standard surgical mask was 5 microns, remember smoke is about 0.3 microns. So the surgical mask was 5 microns. Doesn't match very well. The N95s were designed to be down to 3 microns, and some of them down to 0.1 micron, and filter out 95% of that. So now we have protection from water. We also have protection from smoke, protection from bacteria, protection from viruses. And then taking those farther again to the ones that go all the way down to 0.1 micron. The next 3 slides, again, I won't go through every sentence on them because they're long, but they're important, but actually quite simple. If you look at the purpose and compare the 2 major types of masks that in the operating room environment everybody should be aware of and everybody should be able to make a conscious decision about. Surgical mask versus the respirator. Again, in the U.S., most commonly that's the N95. The European standards, that's going to be an FF1, 2, or a 3, with the 2 being basically the equivalent of the N95 mask, the 3 being the equivalent of a 99 or the N99 mask, which is supposed to filter out at least 99% of anything below that level of a micron. Surgical mask, what's it's there for? You can see provide the barrier for splash, droplets, and spit. Well, that's nice if you're in a room where there is no bacteria, there is no virus, and there is no surgical smoke. And that happens. There are times when that mask is completely appropriate. And I think you can see that there's times when that mask is completely inappropriate. Face seal, we know the surgical mask doesn't fit well. It leaves openings at the side and frequently under the chin, which provides no protection if that's the area where the air goes through. And we also all know that air follows the path of least resistance. If there's a hole, it's going to go through the hole because it's easier to get through. The surgical mask was not designed to fit tightly, to have a seal, so the leakage was an accepted portion of that. And here again, you can see the comparisons. The FFP1 mask is basically an 80% filtration mask. So it's actually better than a standard surgical mask, but it's not as good as the N95. The FFP2 has 94 and 95% filtration, and then the FFP, the equivalent of our N99 or N100 masks. So very, very similar requirements and almost identical in the way that we would consider using them. So here in the European standards, here basically are the 3 types of masks that you'll find. Type 2 procedure mask, it's designed to protect, it's designed to protect the working environment. The type 2R surgical mask takes that one step farther. So it prevents you from spitting on the patient. It also prevents the patient from being splashed back on you and gives you that splash resistance. The big thing here is that neither one of those are really designed to protect you from all of the other things in the air, from surgical smoke, from virus particles, from live flying bacteria because of tissue destruction when the electrocautery is on, which puts us right back to the FFP1, FFP2, and FFP3 respiratory masks. So rather than a surgical mask, they're true respirators They're just in the shape of a surgical mask, and they're available for that type of a procedure. So when you really look at the data, in my lab, we all came to the same conclusion that for years we were blind or ignorant or both, and that surgical smoke may smell good, but it was bad for us. That beyond a doubt, and for 20 years now, it's in the literature of what's in it and what those things can cause, and there's more and more data all the time. So rather than arguing that all the data was wrong, which was nonsense, we also wanted to take a look at what about the patient? We're still there for the patient, and there is no real data. So we wanted to take it one step farther. We wanted to compare the different types of masks and see what really happens. This was the mask that we used. So this is a hybrid N95 respirator that's made to fit like a surgical mask, but it meets all the requirements of an N95 mask. So this will filter out not only the splashes, keep the spit in, the splashes out, but it will also filter out those particles that are small enough to be flying around in surgical smoke, and those particles that may still be live viruses. This is the mask that we ran our race in. We knew it was wearable, we knew it was breathable, but did it make a difference from what might happen to our patients in the types of studies that really hadn't been done rather than just the retrospective studies? We all know that if you take a culture and culture the human mouth, it is nasty. You know, we treat human bites much more aggressively than we treat dog bites in the emergency department because the human mouth is much dirtier than the dog's mouth is. And we also know that in healthcare workers, the bacteria that we now harbor in our mouth and in our nose gets worse and worse. You know, the majority of healthcare workers, after they've been in it very long, are colonized with MRSA. They carry VRE. They have all the nasty stuff because they're around it all the time. So the human mouth is a nasty, nasty place.